Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service. Today I would like to present asteroids in the Jupiter ingress chart. Now, Jupiter will stay in the sign of Taurus for at least a year. So this particular chart is going to be sort of predictive on what we could expect from Jupiter in the next year. But more than that, I would like us to really look at the asteroids as a learning lesson. So we have a chart here that we can look at, that we can do some asteroid work on, and have a clearer understanding of those asteroids. So my focus will, of course, be the asteroids. But with that said, I will be looking at the chart of the ingress, which takes place March 16th, approximately 1:20, depending on where you live. I've seen the time of 1:30, but where I live, 1:20 comes up. So we're going to look at the chart of the exact time when Jupiter begins its journey through the sign of Taurus. I'm going to be looking at it, as I stated, through the United States chart. However, I will be moving that to a dial where we will then do further research on the asteroids that fall in the Jupiter axis of that ingress chart. I'd also like to take a look at some of the aspects of the actual ingress chart, whether they be planetary, trans-Neptunians, or asteroids. So getting a little bit of everything. But again, trying to make the emphasis on the asteroids. So as we begin to move into this chart, I want to thank you for watching this video. It means so much for me that the last video did so well, and I'm crossing my fingers that it will go well once again. With that said, let's go in here and check out the ingress chart for March 16th, 2023, 1:20 p.m. Washington, D.C. So we see here before us the actual chart for the ingress of Jupiter. And it has some interesting stuff in it. This is for Washington, D.C., but I do want to point out a couple of things that are just so obvious, and it's an opportunity, once again, for us to learn the asteroids. So we're starting with the ascendant here, and you can see that if I were to take just looking at these asteroids, like all of these asteroids, everything we're looking at here, from Isis to Lilith, all are falling at that ascendant. So it's giving us, at least for DC, a little bit of a theme. These are the tools. One of the things that you get from this is doing things in pieces. And I do know that we are dealing with a debt issue, and it might be that somebody said they punt. Well, looks like they very much could, because things are being done in pieces. One of the things that comes up that's a tool here, which I think is really interesting, is that some things that we do in life can only be done on our own. And when I get to the square of Jupiter and Pluto, which is quite strong and will be in effect for some time, and it could even linger as that ingress chart has effect on what's happening over the next year. But it does look like there are some things in life that we really have to accept that you have to go it alone, or that maybe it's something that you can only do alone. And so that comes up. Along with that, we have abundantia, which really is telling us that there's a numerous amount of things going on. And I can tell you that Jupiter is it's a orb, so it's not real. It's not real. It's like, Apollon is about 4 degrees 50 minutes, but it is kind of letting us know that Jupiter is going to be squaring that Apollon. And I do know what I'm talking about. And that Apollon represents more than one. Abundantia represents a lot. So there's a lot going on. And I think there's going to be a lot going on for the whole time that Jupiter resides in Taurus. So we move on. And below Abundantia, we have doo-doo, which represents crap. There's too much crap going on. I think we can all identify with that. And it causes things to move so slowly. And it's setting up a lot of competition, Lilith. Lilith is about gender issues, which in this country we really do have. There's such a misogyny here in the United States. We are one of the most misogynist countries, so that stands. I mean, you know, some people will say that's not true, but it really is true. It's taken us so long to put female leaders compared to the rest of the world. That, I think, speaks for itself. So then we move on with this slowness because of the, you know, if people weren't so divided, I do know a lot of things would happen quicker, but unfortunately that's not the situation. So as we cross over to the other side, we still have a good number that are really residing in there. Not as many as we had at the ascendant, but we do have Aragon, which is self-destructive behavior. What are we witnessing that's self-destructive? I can name a few things, especially when it comes to Saturn. How is it that Saturn is causing self-destruction? I think we're going to see that in the laws over the next couple of years. Also, I like the body language and the terpsichore here, the body stuff, and how, you know, what is damaging to the body and then ultimately to our health. And I don't have to really elaborate on this. Anyone following the news can say that women's health issues are definitely what could be talked about here. The restrictions on women is destructive and it's physically destructive. And so that's pretty accurate. The other thing that's pretty interesting is that we have the sun. Now it is a wide conjunction to Uranus, so I'm not even going to include that. But we have that sun there in the 9th house as it's coming to the 10th house, which is the midheaven. And it does kind of indicate to me, because the 9th house is politics and government, not the government itself, that's actually 10th, but it's like the politics of. And I want to tell you, things are changing. Of course, you don't have to be a genius to figure that out, nor do you have to figure out why that needs to change. And this down here, dependency, things that we're dependent on, the look of it, not so good. We could start right with the Supreme Court. And the this is a really interesting asteroid to me because it also represents its animal deaths. Okay, so that's an interesting, I'm not sure how that's going to show up in this, although let's be honest that with the earth changes being what they are, there could be climate or environmental issues related to that. But I thought that was kind of interesting as it didn't seem to fit the theme of a lot of things that I'm seeing going on up there. There's a lot of questioning about what's going on and a lot of questioning how it's going to affect us in the future. There's a slowness to what's going on. Well, yeah, we're coming to a deadline for a debt. You know, not wanting to pay your bills, just really not the way to go, right? It also talks about how the vehicle that could be used is slowness. That if we slow everything up, we're going to be able to either create more chaos or we're going to get what we want. I don't know, but that's what I see. So not dwelling on that too much, I do want to look at Jupiter itself, which in this DC chart is hanging out right inside of that 9th house again, the house of change. But then remember that Pluto's about expansion. And look how close the node is. Now remember that the node then also brings us closer to that Apollon. But there is this kind of expansion here that could happen throughout the next year. And the expansion would include change. Of course, we have to think differently. We have to think more in layers and it's more complicated. But what I also like up here is Hephaestus. Okay, Hephaestus is known for its odd couples or putting together things that don't really look like they belong. You can see odd couples in relationships. You can see odd couples coming together in um, in the world. I think I can think of a really good odd couple right now that's in the news, and that would be Clarence Thomas hanging out with a white nationalist. That's kind of interesting. So I don't know. You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I can say that's an interesting concept. We could also look at the here again at 25 degrees, we do have the asteroid Apollonia, which again reiterates that there's a lot going on because Apollonia is red just like Apollon. So it could be business related, could be some growth, but it also kind of is a warning that there's a lot of things going on, more than one, generally speaking. So as I pull up, I want to look at really simple things first. I want to look at Jupiter in its, here we go, in its finery here. Okay. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things. Jupiter at the beginning of this is squaring Mars. Just really quickly, I actually looked at this and I can tell you that if we proceed with caution and we don't act in a reckless manner, okay, that's a big if because this is really impulsive energy, we could be very successful. If you can harness the energy, that will require some self discipline. It's, we're so tempted with that combination of Mars and Jupiter to go quicker than is healthy for us to go and is healthier for our situation. So we have to be mindful of that. Here's the rest of my notes. Here we go. It infects us with optimism, but it's not justified optimism. We are more future oriented, which is a good thing, but you have to be careful not to overtax yourself because here again, you can overextend yourself on every level just so easily with Mars squaring Jupiter. Excuse me. Excuse me, allergies. I had a teacher describe, and I thought it was really wonderful because I see these squares so much easier than a lot of other people do. And I can tell you that Jupiter as a square is never bad. But it is bad because it causes people with the square to like overdo it, be overly confident, and then kind of mess things up in a way, not terribly. You know what he used to say about Venus and Jupiter: if you have it in square, it's still a good party. It's just that you probably broke the chandelier. So, in other words, there are repercussions when you're talking about the squares, okay? And so, though it's a good energy, and I do want to say that it's a good energy, it's an energy where we have to harness it, we have to be mature about it, we have to be realistic about it. So, as we move on, Jupiter and Mercury is interesting because watch people talk too much. Then they also tend to say too much. Just be aware of that. There will be a lot of conversation. I can also tell you that what is happening will not be easily resolved. Nothing. Everything, there's an Astrea on it. I can tell you, we already talked about the nodes. I can tell you that this is a very healing time for organizations, companies, and I think technically families. So as I go back into this, we have a little problem outside. It's called road construction. I swear, because I live in a city, we go through road construction. This is not an exaggeration. I've lived here for years. The last several years, every couple months. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, sorry about that. Fortunately, I don't think we're going to hear too much. So when we go on and we look at this Jupiter, we can't ignore the fact that the Jupiter itself is making a beautiful trine to Cupido. Okay, the only thing that concerns me about Cupido, we think of it as families and organizations, but not all organizations are on the up and up. So please be aware of that. Yeah, it's good for all organizations, but that would include the Federalist Society. So if you're in the United States, you know exactly what I talk when I talk about that, what I'm saying. Okay? And this is true of any of these organizations in any country because I have news for you. Those people, those players are affecting many governments, not just this one. Okay? The opposition to Apollon I did speak of. This is an interesting one. I'm going to talk about this and the square to Pluto, which if you notice is only 18 minutes, and I'm going to talk about that at length. So that's why I've missed it. Jupiter squaring the trans-Neptunian Vulcanus is the application of power. But some of the direction of this particular energy is probably rather destined. So it's like this pressure that's coming from the inside out to heal, to expand. And it won't always be easy because the squares require work. Okay? But Vulcanus, as I've learned in my new class, can have a lot to do with destiny. And so it's pushing us, pushing, because of the square, us into what we're supposed to be. So I left that Pluto for last, and I don't want to get into, I mean, that I could talk about just that one aspect for a while, and we're not going to do that, but I do want to give you some information on that. When you have Pluto in the mix with Jupiter, you are looking at the rise of our ambitions. All of us, really, there's a striving for success and power. All right. Now, most people do not try to trip up other people to get that power. They don't try to manipulate or lie or do things to gain that power, which, by the way, is never a good idea because in the end, you'll get sliced and diced because the planets have a way of issuing their own karma. Okay? But you have to be aware that during this time, because of the rise of ambition, the ruthlessly powerful people, the people that power means everything to, and I don't think I have to describe any examples. I think we all have that. We've got a lot of world leaders I could point to right now. That is going to be bad if that is something that is happening because that has a way of biting you. However, and the other thing is because you're going to run into resistance. In other words, if you're not doing this for the good of everyone, if there isn't an altruistic quality to this push, you're going to meet a lot of resistance. A lot. It can bring you success in your social standing. So if you handle this energy right, it can be very wonderful. Because remember, Pluto could be ruthless. But Jupiter is healing and benign and expansive. However, it has no real discipline. So it's very difficult sometimes to restrain it. It also talks about how, it's a time of repairing and rebuilding. Well, I am hoping that for our country and for all the countries out there because I think everyone needs it. So we are striving for that. Remember, other things about this Jupiter make us future oriented. Be wary of obsession. That's probably one of the worst aspects of this energy. We can become quite obsessive, particularly people that are power hungry. Here we go again. Most of us like our little wins and we're okay with that. But there are those where that's just not enough or they need more. I mean, look at the one percenters. I mean, some of these people in the world have more money than they'll ever be able to do anything with in this lifetime. And yet they still have to have it. Something I don't understand, but that's not in my chart. I'm not a money person on any level. You can ask anyone around me. It's actually sad. So as we move on, one of the things that they really, really want to remind you of is to avoid any shady activities during this time. Don't get involved in underhanded scheming. You're probably either going to meet some resistance or you're going to get caught. Okay? I just think that, again, Jupiter has way too many aspects going on. Do you really think you'll get away with it? I'm going to go with no. So let's move on. And just because this Pluto positioning is actually so interesting, I am going to pull out my asteroid list. And I do want to talk about, um, I'm not going to worry about what's in the Aries point as well, but I do want to warn you, and I might get to it if we have a few minutes. Minerva is there in this chart. Politics, politics. Let's tell them what they want to hear and then do what we think is best. We've actually seen elections where people changed parties so they could vote against their constituents. Not so sure that'll be a good thing to do with Pluto in this position. So I do want to talk about, I did want to bring that up because that's like so in there. And like I say, maybe I'll go back and I'll look at that stuff. I just really wanted to do that as a warning. The axis that we're going to be looking at, and you can see the ladder of it right now, and it's actually a minute off, by the way. It's 40. Okay, so 740 and 2240 fixed are a part of this axis, as well as the obvious. Let's see if I can do it. Oh, got to do the minutes again. As well as 30 degrees. Oh, I hate when I do that. As well as 30 degrees. Did you see Pluto was there? Pluto's really there. Okay, so I can't ignore that. The fact that Jupiter ingressed after Aquarius, the Pluto had already moved into Aquarius. Now realize that Pluto's moving back in June next month, but for some reason it was sitting there for the ingress. Really important. So here's our other one, and here again, we're going to go with an asteroid that's related to hunter and prey, or, we're hunting things out, and animals. I talked about them very briefly in the last chart. There are a lot of animals. Okay, so these are our areas. This is the Jupiter, and this is where it leads. Look at all these little configurations that include the midheaven. So whatever is going on in DC, and the reason why I felt really comfortable talking about it, because I normally don't. I really try to make these charts as personal as possible, even if I'm doing them from the DC area. But did you see this? Midheaven, the future of the DC, and the Aries point? Yeah. See the Aries point? Yeah. Not much of what's going to go on here isn't going to, let's just say this, it's going to make the news. So, and again, we're looking at a debt which could affect the whole world. So we have the world watching, which I think very interesting, and yes, very, very accurate. So let's talk about this axis. So I'm going to start with this axis. So what we're looking at here is, and this is really interesting because there's 3 asteroids here, and I'm just going to name them out. Bano, which is about partnerships, marriages, things of that. Libitina, a lot of tears with Libitina. It's like Lacrimosa, but if you ask me, it's more tears. It's more like Orpheus. It's very sad. And Panacea. And one of the things that I feel is that there could be some issues within some partnerships that we're going to look to solutions. Okay? We're going to get a solution on this. And that's what Panacea is. Okay? So we're going to watch that one. I did tell you, I'm going to move past that. I'm going to get back for the Aries axis if I have time. Admetus is also in this. Now, Admetus is not the trans-Neptunian. It's actually the asteroid, but you still get this feeling of being stuck. You still get this feeling of being blockaded. You still get this. So Admetus, the asteroid, acts very much like the trans-Neptunian, right? So Jupiter is bringing in a block. Yeah, we're not going to be able to expand the way we want to. There's that, and we'll get back to it. Okay, I'll talk about that later. So then we move on, and Artemis, which is dealing with, and I talked about that when we went through, it's the animal, Artemis, here it is. We already talked about it. It's the animal, but it's also hunter prey. It's like Diana, but it's like the male version. Asteria is like we're praying. We are praying for that answer that we're hunting for. We are praying that the people doing the hunting, I can think of a few things right now, get their man. Okay? So there is a little bit of that going on, and I think that's pretty cool. That's it, that 15 degrees, that's up there, here, right here I'm reading. And then I want to go back to up here where the arrow was pointing initially, and you can see that panacea. So I'm really in that area. And here we again get this idea, it's Gawain. So Gawain. Berlin, which is something entirely different, is something I've been talking about in another area, and it's about Berlin is an asteroid. I don't know if we're going to see it in the Aries point here yet or not. I know it comes in by the end of May, but it's something I use for learning disabilities. But realize that if we don't have all the information, we are also at a deficit in terms of what we know. Gawain is something I look at in the same way. It's a subordinate intellectually. So it's like people who are not really allowed to have opinions, or their opinions are demeaned in some way. And that's also what I see here. Okay. So that's a weird thing. I thought that was really weird. So then other things that I saw were addictive issues, people who are addicted to drugs in particular, to alcohol, its dynasties, but also to behavior. Also realize that when you have Dionysus or Bacchus in an axis such as this, you're looking at a lot of denial. Okay, that's a denial concept. So we got a lot of denial. Even though it's right there in your face, they're still going to deny it, right? And we're going to move on. And the next one that I want to talk about in the fixed is, well, really, it's two of them, is Hidalgo, which is the inability to speak out or speak up because maybe there's a fear of how people react. And what's interesting is it comes with face. Moin, if I'm saying it right. M-E-I-N, mean. It's a German word for face. Again, in the dailies, which is another group, I do that on Patreon. If anyone's interested in daily astrology, join Patreon. I'm doing daily astrology on there again, and it's the lowest tier right now. You know, it's only for the people who are paying for ads. So for no ads, which I think is a $3 a month. So if anybody's interested, go check that out. It's just like really weird because I do them both now, and I keep seeing things that I already talked about on that group. And that kind of, that Hidalgo and that Moin, that M-I-E-N. I'm sorry, it's German. It's I-E-N because I should know better. I actually am pretty good in German. Not as good to be fluent, though. The Hidalgo is maybe the reason why we are not speaking up, and speaking out could have to do with what somebody's face looks like. But in the dailies, it was Cupido A, which is also a little bit about face or what things appear, what they look like. Okay, so it's about faces, appearances, okay? So it's in there. I love the way astrology repeats its themes. We also have in here Ophelia. Now it is retrograde, but it's overreactions. People, please be careful of overreacting. We had all those warnings about if you do things impulsively, if you're not thinking things through, if you cannot harness this energy. Well, here we have Ophelia. Overreactions absolutely will be part of this. It's retro. They won't act normal, but they'll still be overreacting. With Pluto, we have an asteroid called Ditto, and it means just that, D-I-D-O, which means the same as, or here, or there's another one, or, you know. So it's Ditto. Ditto. With Pluto, Power issues. Again, power issues. You see where we can go with that? Okay, I like giving you, the asteroids are so cool because they really mean what they are. Unlike if you were to get into, say, a planet and it has all these different nuances to it. No, asteroids don't have a whole lot of nuance. That's what's so cool about them. Be aware of Tantalus, which is also in it. Now we're back down here again and in this area. And I'm going to be really honest with you. Icarus is also running with Hidalgo, so you're going to have to be really careful also. That's why we're not speaking out, because it would be like racing toward the sun and getting your wings singed. It's a risk. It's a risk. Okay? So maybe people aren't speaking out about something because it is a risk. Well, right there is where we also have Tantalus, which is temptation. So we have temptations to take a risk. So there's a lot, there really is a lot here that's very, very interesting, that's running. And when you see things on a dial and they're in conversation, and I'm just going to point this out. This, here it is. Where are we at? We're at 20. Here we are. Okay, so this Icarus, this Hidalgo, okay, they are squaring. They're not in the same sign. Okay, so the conversation between them might not be so easy, is what I'm getting at. Because a lot of times when you see something on a dial, there is a little bit more drama to it than seeing, a trine, for example, which is an easier energy. But Icarus is definitely not in good aspects to that Hidalgo, just so that we realize that. The last things I want to look at is Hack and Pandora. Hack, because those are shortcuts. Hacks can be on the computer, but a hack could be a life shortcut. Hacks are shortcuts, and Pandora they're surprising. Are they surprising in a good way or a bad way? I think we're going to have to see that one through. I don't know. I think with some of the stuff going on here and all the risks that we're taking, I think you're just going to have to wait and see it through, right? Just outside of that is New Beginnings, but I think that the New Beginnings are rather tough because of I do think there's solving of problems, don't get me wrong, but I think that there's just so much going on that I think it's going to be really difficult to get a handle on everything. So just really quickly, and I'm doing this just as quickly as I can, so hopefully I don't miss anything. We did see that Minerva was there. That's huge. It's politics. And, politics has a way of showing up everywhere. But I also feel that what we're looking at here is compassion as well. Compassion is down here. So I think that people might, as that Jupiter comes in to Taurus and some of this stuff begins to happen and we become more ambitious, there could be more compassion. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So compassion is in there. When I move on, we have, and this is an interesting combo here. We have Shiva, which is our withdrawal or destruction to reconstruct, and lust. Lust are the things that we're excited about, but lust is also, I know it sounds really funny because it could be real lust, but I'm thinking more like the other way we use lust, which is like homeopathic or natural remedies, things that are natural. It doesn't have to be medical, but just more organic. There's a word. More organic remedies. And then we move on, and I'm still staying with the Aries point right now. Let me put this in the Aries point because I think that there's some interesting stuff in this chart. The Jupiter midheaven is for the United States, as well as the ascendant midheaven, which is our calling. I like the Pluto midheaven because we are going to be in a state of transformation. And again, this is United States, but I really did like it to see all that there. So I'm continuing on. So as we get into, where am I here? Oh, here we are. I do want to point out that Actor and Mezzanine are coming together at the Aries point. They're forming, the midpoint here would be Orpheus and Wake. Orpheus being sad and awake, being conscious of something, something very sad. But the what's in the middle there is your memory, okay, what we remember, and actor. And it makes me think that somebody doesn't remember, so they're acting. Because actor is actor. It's not real. It's like Perkin. Okay. What I always used to say when I saw this, I used to say, fake it till you make it. Okay. Depending on the chart that I was looking at. So, just moving on. I want to get down here. We got through that column. We have our next area. There's not a lot in the Aries point, ironically, but what is there is a reminder. Malit's there. We are doing a lot of wondering how to solve problems, wondering how we're going to get through this, wondering when and if we can speak out. There's just so many different ways in which that shows up. I could use so many examples. The other thing that shows up, and I talked about this in dailies, is the Berlin is coming into the Aries points, only in by maybe 2 minutes at that point. So in other words, it has a ways to go. But Berlin is something that I use for learning disabilities, but learning disabilities is showing up with children or child, which means that yes, children are behind. There is no doubt about that. And they're falling behind, I think, for a number of reasons. I don't think it's just because of the pandemic. I think it's also because of what's going on with school boards, what's going on with parents, what's going on with teachers. I think that there is an upheaval in our educational system. Now, if you're in another country, and I'm not so sure of what's going on there, but think about that. Child is not in there yet, by the way. So for that, it isn't. But doo-doo is and crone is. So some of the issues that we're having, child is above that learning thing. So I'm not going to call it as an Aries point. But what I am going to call as an Aries point is our leaders. And how is it that our leaders are suppressing, in this case, what we know or what our children know, and how much of it is BS, doo-doo. Okay? Something to look at. I move on, and the next one I'm going to run into is lies down here, which cause problems. Lies which cause adamite. Adamite means we're stuck. Okay, so adamite's there inside of the Aries point. I think adamitas show as an asteroid. These are asteroids. Showed up in the Jupiter axis, but in the Aries axis, we have lies hanging out with adamite. How do lies keep us from where we need to be? Okay, and then right after that, you've got that Hiladaco from the Jupiter. So really interesting lineup in that arena for sure. Otherwise, for the Aries point, I didn't get as much in this arena over here. Yeah, the only one I have is be very careful of self-destructive behavior. Oh yeah, forgot you. And I'll tell you why that's important, because Barassices is back up here. It's coming into the Aries point. It's literally only 8 minutes off. And what it's telling us is that, you know, people have these preconceived notions of what they need in their life to make them happy, and to have a feeling a lot of people are going to find out that's not true. That realization is going to happen. And then you have right above that Aragon, self-destructive behavior. So we really need to get a handle on some of this in order to make the most of what's going on right now, but also as we play out into the next year. But you got a lot of asteroids to work with in this particular video. So thank you for watching the video. If you're not a subscriber, I hope you'll consider becoming one. But in the meantime, if you would, like, share, comment, because it all helps the algorithms. With that said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And until we meet again, I wish you only happy reading.